Jeremy's wife. Is your wife? Oh, she's gonna be on TV. Does she know? I just say it.
We'll call our meeting to order. If you would please rise, we'll pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everyone, for being here. So, Brian, if you would do our roll call.
Kelly,
Here.
Steve,
Here.
Mike,
Here.
Nancy,
Here.
Jeremy,
Here.
Mark. I'm here.
Be time for our public comment, and I think we only have one here. Delbert Eichholz, you're welcome to address council.
Delbert Eichholz, Georgetown. I'm not sure, when we talk about this Adora thing, I'm not sure is there anything positive about it? I mean, I hear people saying things like, it'll bring in business. Well, again, nobody can prove that. And that'd be like me saying my truck looks normal, but it'll fly. So anyway, but I got a better idea. I think a buffet right before the meeting would work really good, because if you don't get to eat before you get here, it's going to be late when you get home.
You got that right. And I think that probably ought to be done. I think that we should anoint that thought. So, all right. Thank you, Delbert. We have a special presentation, but we're waiting a little bit, I think, for Jason Hammond. We're going to plow through some of our just run-of-the-mill things, our reviews of minutes, then we'll come back to him. So in section 6 of the general business section, I'm looking for the approval of the January 12th meetings, the regular session of council. If there are any corrections, deletions, additions to be made, this would be the time to do so.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Nancy on there. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jeremy. Let's do a roll call, I guess.
Mark? Yes. Jeremy?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Then on page 5, it's a review of the Utilities Committee meeting minutes. If anyone has questions to the Utility Committee members, they can do that now, or if the Utility Committee wishes to bring anything up, they're more than welcome to do so.
If nobody has any questions, I would just comment that we had the final 2 public meetings for gas aggregation tonight with representative from Aspen Energy. Things went really great. If anybody did not catch those, they can watch them again, because we streamed and recorded it. And also, Mr. Sell had a PowerPoint presentation, a brief one, but it's got some important points in it. And so we're going to be posting that on the village webpage as well. So that kind of brings this phase of gas aggregation to a close. Now it's a lot of signing some papers and getting Columbus to sign off on some things just as quickly as we possibly can.
Any questions?
No, but maybe in addition to that,
Oh,
didn't we, in that meeting, I see traffic signals mentioned here, and didn't we sort of put that on hold because Administrator Owens wasn't at that meeting and we wanted to wait until we could discuss that with him in person? Is that how I remember that?
What I have is like notes to bring up for the next meeting to get some of that stuff finalized. It was very much tabled because we couldn't do a whole lot in that situation.
That's the way I remember it. Just to look at these minutes, it looks like we maybe decided some stuff about that and we didn't. Yeah. Okay.
No, we did not. Yeah.
Anything else? If not, we will move on for the review of our Community Development Committee meeting that was on page 6. That was January 12th. Once again, if there are anyone that would like to ask the Community Development Committee members anything, or if they wish to comment, they feel free to do so.
The only thing I would add to this is custom printing starts with a K, but that's not a big deal. We had talked about maybe council or CDC or whatever doing some grand openings if they don't join the chamber. And even if they do, then do some kind of a welcome to the village kind of thing. Just kind of threw it around. So anybody's ideas on that would be welcome.
Any other things?
That's it.
If not, then we just keep on moving. We had a budget committee meeting on January the 12th, page 7. Again, if any committee members wish to make any comments, or if there's any other questions by any of the others, we can talk about that at this time. If there are none, we will move on. On page 8 is a review of the ad hoc sign committee meeting. And their minutes are there. If there's questions about the ad hoc signage committee, we could ask them now. Or if not, we can let them keep on ad hocing.
Yeah, this is pretty self-explanatory. I think I do want to mention that bless Jeremiah Anderson's heart, he kind of got trapped with us, and he was so patient and good to, well, how big is this? How big is that? And he had his tape measure and was marking things in that. But I think this pretty well covers.
How many signs have we presently purchased?
The big signs, 2.
2. And then how many of the, we're going to have like some little ones that go around different entrances in the
There's
town?
6 entrances, I think.
6 or so.
Yeah, and they're going to probably cost, what, $40, $50, the blue ones.
Maximum. I was really impressed with how expensive they're not.
Right.
It was pretty cool, actually.
Very good. Thank
They're
you.
nice signs, but they're not.
Yeah, they look a lot better than those big Ring Georgetown Corporation limit.
Right. Thank you.
Anything else? If not, we'll move on. Again, we're plowing through this. Review of the cemetery committee meeting minutes, and I'll add a little something here. We weren't necessarily following to the T the terms of members of the cemetery board, so we started this year. I'm appointed 3 people to the board. I need your approval. Susan Bean to a 2-year term, Stephanie Dyer to a 4-year term, and Kelly Hessler to a 6-year term.
We have a 6-year term stated like in the,
Ohio Revised Code.
okay,
Yeah,
I find that interesting.
yes.
I make a motion to approve those.
Okay, we have a motion by Steve, second by Michael. If you'll do a roll call on that, please.
Kelly,
Yes,
Steve,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes,
Jeremy,
Yes.
Mark.
Abstain.
Okay, very good. That passes. We'll go on in our packet. If we're getting close for Jason, let me know, but I think we're plowing through this pretty quickly. We can go through these last 2 anyway. Joey, this will be something for you to comment on. It's a resolution for the fire EMS contract for Lewis Township. Do you have anything to add to that?
We talked about this. Hell with it. So Lewis Township is obviously Oak Grove Road, Eden Road, that part of the world, Feesburg and that. There was some talk, if you'll remember a few months ago, about we were approached by Lewis Township trustees as taking over that kind of the whole township. And I was never really comfortable with that, especially after going down and driving the roads and the distances traveled and what have you. I feared for the folks that lived on the southern part, their ISO ratings would plummet and, and that affects insurances, what have you. But long story short, we, all the fire chiefs got together and we met 3 or 4 times. And what we finally ended up with was bringing Hamersville back into the picture. And so we actually lost some coverage area to Hamersville that made sense that they covered it because they were much closer. If you remember, we took that from them a couple years ago when they were having some issues. They've kind of put those issues behind them. So we ended up losing some territory, but gained about $12,500 in contract money. So less response area, more money. So that seems logical to me. So, okay.
So in regard to that, there is a resolution on page 10. And Kelly, would you be so kind as to read it by title only, please?
Ask questions?
As soon as we read this by title,
Okay,
we
I'm
will.
sorry.
Yes.
a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Lewis Township, Brown County, Ohio, for the provision of fire and EMS services.
questions. Mark?
How many runs did you make out there last year?
Well, I gave you guys.
Yeah, I know. It goes in and out real quick.
Look real quick, I can't remember off the top of my head.
We're getting old, Joe.
You are, I'm not.
Hey.
The fire department responded to 21 calls, and the EMS side of the department responded to, it was about 90 calls.
Okay,
Mark.
even though that resolution isn't yet passed, I'm under the assumption that if something would happen today, right now, before it is passed, you guys would still cover it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to be sure everybody, the public
Yeah.
knows that they're still being covered.
Yeah.
Because public safety, that's my whole big
Yeah.
thing.
Just,
That's
we
the
would
only
like
thing
to
I'm
done
worried-
this before the end of the year, but
I got you.
some people were sick, some trustees were out, and one of their trustees is a firefighter for Higginsport, so he has to stay out of the conversation. And when you only have one trustee, you know how it is. So that
Okay.
happened to 2 meetings in a row.
My whole questions, I probably know the answers. I just want to get it out to the public so they know that.
Right.
The
It's,
The
the
public
protection is still there.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I think we've talked about this before, but are we prepping to have conversations with these townships about how they will help us in the future with
Mhm.
equipment and
Yeah.
because
That, there was a whole conversation at the very first meeting with some capital that Lewis Township has on hand that, should we need radios and that they're willing to help, because essentially that's all the money can be spent on,
Mhm.
is is stuff fire and EMS, or actually fire related. So
and the same with the other townships too,
yes,
right?
with the
Because
other ones
they're-
as well. Yeah.
I mean,
Scott Township, I think that's the next one on the docket, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But
Okay.
I've been, the only one I haven't been really actively engaged with is Pleasant Township. I'm going to their next meeting to give them the reports, but I haven't been. But that's one that's going to need some real attention here in the very near future, as far as compensation goes. So
But
Is that it? Is that number you mentioned earlier, the 12,500?
500.
What area does that cover now, just to be clear?
Um,
And
So-
was that number you gave earlier that he was given, was that the calls that was run to that specific area or?
Yeah, that portion of our, well, that was into Lewis Township. Some of those were cover runs for other departments.
What would be a fair assumption to say is the runs for that $12,500 area a year as far as fire and EMS?
There's another township that we cover part of it for the same revenue. And we do a less runs, but as compared to Pleasant Township in that, it's very lucrative. Yeah. Yeah, last year we were at 35,000. This year it's at 47.5.
So that 12 was added on to the
Right.
30, okay.
And so our district shrank.
See, I'm thinking the 12,000 number, but that's added on top of it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So basically what they did is they took what the contract is suspected to bring in and they split it up 4 ways. So they're not keeping it, rolling any back or anything. They're paying it out as they should. So
In Georgetown, if you guys are on a call to Georgetown, then they wouldn't get the service first. The Georgetown would get the service first.
we
correct?
we do first call. Yeah. Whatever call comes in first is the one we answer.
Gotcha.
any other questions about the Lewis Township contract? If there are none, we would entertain a motion to approve this.
Do have one comment real quick.
Yes, go ahead.
Natalie asked me to get with all the townships and ask them, normally we get paid like December 30th. And she asked me to arrange it to where we get paid in June and in November. So far I'm 2 for 2. I've just got to get with Pleasant yet. So
Once again, we need a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
By Mark, do we have a second?
I'll second.
By Nancy, let's do a roll call vote, please, Brian.
Yes.
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 Mike?
Yes.
That's 1327.
1327, thank you. Also, since Joey's there, he's going to be doing the same thing for Scott Township, so if you want to talk about that, Joey.
There were some talks earlier in the summer, last fall, about us expanding our territory into Hamersville's portion of Scott Township. That didn't materialize, so it's pretty much staying the same as it has been. I have been in talks with the trustees, and they are agreeing to talks of putting a levy on next year to increase the revenue that we're getting. So they were very receptive of that, and they knew that, it needed to be done. So we just got to work with them to come up with amounts and what have you. So myself and the other two chiefs that are affected by it. So the coverage area and the money we're receiving for Scott Township is staying the same as it was last year. So.
Any questions?
Can I ask a question?
Right ahead.
So if they present a levy to the taxpayers and that fails, what happens?
Well, what they do is they'll have their existing levy, and then they'll add another levy. So it doesn't cancel one another out. So
But
if this
it's-
one fails, they still have the old levy in place.
But what if the new one fails? The existing money that is there this year doesn't go up.
We'll be doing this again next year.
Yeah.
The same coverage area, May Bryce.
So here's my question. Why on earth would anybody in Scott Township vote for the levy then? Because they're going to get the service anyway.
Because at some point we can say no to them and they're gonna go without coverage.
Yeah, so basically myself and Mount Orb and Hamersville could get together and say, well, we're not going to, it's going to cost you X amount of money for us to cover it, take it or leave it.
Okay.
I mean, it's not, and we've got to protect our own interest. You know what I mean? So,
That's.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the other departments, but
When I brought all those charts with how much each township paid in Scott Township, I forgot what it was, but it wasn't 9% or 9 mils. And that's what I'm worried about, is protecting the interest of us.
Any other questions or concerns? If not, Kelly, could you read this one also by title?
Resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Scott Township, Brown County, Ohio, for the provision of fire and EMS services.
So moved.
Okay, no more questions? If not, we have a motion by Mark to approve this. Is there a second?
Second.
By Nancy. Let's do a roll call vote, Brian.
Kelly?
Yes.
Steve?
yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
That's 1328.
8. Okay, we've gone through those general business issues there. Art, are we ready for Jason at this time? Or
No, Mayor, he said give him about 10 to 15 more
Okay.
minutes. I think you can just probably move on.
Okay, we'll go to the, yeah, go
Can
right
I
ahead.
finish up? Because I've been at work for like 30 hours. I want to go home. So I'm going to speak real quick. I filed 3 grants this week. The same, 2 of the same ones that we wrote last year that weren't successful. And then, which was to replace their ladder truck and another vehicle with one. And then the other one is for battery operated extrication tools to upgrade from the gas power ones we have now. And then a $15,000 state fire marshal equipment grant to get 3 sets of turnout gear. So I've got 3 in there. If you remember, Art wrote a grant for us to get us a new gear washer. So we've got that.
Those matching, I'm sorry, is this proper to speak? Are those matching grants?
The state fire marshal one is not. The other 2, the assistance firefighter grants, they're not matching, but it's a percentage. So for say, he wrote the grant for $1.2 million to replace a ladder truck. So we would have to pay him a percentage of whatever we're awarded. So in the olden days, you would go out and spec a truck and get a price for it, and then they would get you the grant. You go buy it. Now they do lump sum. So he's saying this is about what that truck would cost to replace. So we would have to pay him, I think it's 3% of whatever he gives us. So if we get $1 million grant, we owe the grant writer 3%.
That is a deal because the average on grant writing is about 8%. 3% is really a good deal.
And then the grant for the gear extractor washing machine, that was not matching. That was a workers' comp grant, and that was 100%.
Did we give you like 20% for writing that?
I was looking at 120%, but I was going to ask you that later.
That's the only thing I have. if you guys don't care, I'm gonna take off.
Peace out. Yeah.
All right.
Go to bed.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
In your packet is our payment listing. We'll knock out a few things until Jason is ready for us. Is there any questions about some of the checks that were written? Art will probably know many of these, and Brian perhaps, and a little bit of me. You guys are getting used to looking at these things now. There are none, or if you have questions about others after you leave, those will be ones you could bring up to Natalie at your convenience. Give her a call or text her or email her. If Jason is still waiting, we can go on down and we'll just announce our meetings. We'll wait until do roundtable afterwards. But we have an Emergency Services Committee meeting Tuesday, January 31st at 4:30. And we have our council work session, which is going to be Thursday, February 2nd at 5 o'clock. So we hope that all of you can be here for that. Our Utilities Committee meeting is Thursday, February 9th at 5 o'clock. The Community Development Committee meeting Thursday, February 9th at 6 p.m. And our regular council meeting will be Thursday, February 9th at 7 p.m.
Since the budget meeting was canceled for today, do we need to set another one?
Yeah. Do you want to try to do that now, or you want to wait until it's roundtable, or what? Yep.
Nancy and Steve. So you guys take a look. Steve, what works for you?
So our council meeting is on the 9th. And we.
There's two meetings in front of our council meeting on the 9th.
And one being at 6 and one being at 5.
Right.
Is 4 o'clock an option for you two?
Sure.
Councilperson Montgomery, does 4 o'clock work for you that day? That would be
4
my
p.m.
preference.
on February 9th. Okay. Are we still waiting for Jason? If we can talk a little bit more.
He's, Jeremy's getting,
I sent
Yes.
him the link again.
I'm
so I don't know
sorry.
if you want to text him and say I just resent him
Okay.
the link.
Okay. Captain Staggs has something to bring up.
Yeah, I know I've came up here expressing how the police department continues to get more serious and timely calls, and today isn't any different. Over the last month, we've spent approximately 100 hours of manpower. It's been used to focus on a serious case. This case required advanced skills, and I'm glad to say our police department was equipped to handle it. On Wednesday, January 25th, I was able to present a case to the Brown County Grand Jury and close an investigation. Dylan Moore, 32-year-old male, was handed down a 30-count felony indictment. He was indicted on 11 counts of possessing child pornography, 11 counts of transmitting child pornography, 7 counts of unlawful sexual conduct with a minor, and 1 count of human trafficking. I'm glad to say this case was actually brought to a close very quickly, considering everything that was involved. I contribute to that as one of the tools that we purchase every year. I'm trained and licensed on the Oxygen Forensic System, which is a phone extraction system. And this is pretty much what made this case. I was able to extract a lot of data, videos, photographs, victim information. So we were able to close it. I also like to recognize Officer Honeyke and Rammel for their assistance in the investigation. They wrote multiple search warrants along with doing follow-ups and stuff for me. So that was a pretty big case that we were able to close out in about a month, which is very unusual.
Congratulations to you and the staff
Yeah,
and
thank
all
you.
that participated in that. This is the one where you had to have the postponement, the grand jury was not available.
Yeah. I still can't really release too much detail. Obviously, the victim's a juvenile, so.
Okay, well,
I'll
we'll keep
respect
up the great work that you do, so that's very much appreciative.
that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good job.
Please let the other officers know as well.
Yes.
if you would. Okay, have we heard with the link yet or not? Okay. Well, I guess we could start with our roundtable discussion. We can cut it off if we need to, but Kelly, do you have anything for a roundtable discussion?
Only thing I wanted to see, a couple of things, I guess they kind of interrelate, if you will. Taco Bell, I know there's a lot of buzz about that. Right? But I mean, I didn't see a zoning report in here, and I don't think I've seen one for a couple months, but I'm curious to know at this point with Taco Bell, shouldn't we be at the stage where we're able to look at zoning violations to kind of,
There was a legal battle
right?
going on. That has been resolved. And they're supposed to be starting back to work like really soon. There's nothing zoning, and not the reason you haven't seen the zoning report is because I haven't been here, and I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
He's given them, but I stay on the Taco Bell thing because I know that a lot of people are upset over Taco Bell, you know. But I do want people in the public to understand that's not anything to do with the village, though.
Right,
So,
and I
yeah.
understand that. It's just the fact that it's such an eyesore, and it's really, I mean, it's becoming like where it's kind of
Well,
a danger to the
They
area.
were in a legal situation. I'm just afraid if we start pressuring them from that standpoint, they may tear it down and just say the heck with Georgetown and go. I mean, it's fenced in. I see what you're saying, but let's try to give them at least till the weather breaks a little bit. They've got a lot of money wrapped up there, and I'm almost sure now they're going to have to take the wood down and restart the back of that fell today or yesterday or today. So I will check on it for you and try to get a better answer, but they should be starting their construction back here really soon.
Anything else, Kelly?
Nope, that's it.
Steve?
Yeah. And maybe Jeremy, maybe this was going to be touched on by others. I don't know, but I know recently in, I don't know if we Facebook, there's been some conversation about the comments with meetings, and I'm not, right off the bat, I'm not driving for any point here. I need some clarification myself. So I thought that when we had, and I know it's a work in progress, and I also want to say on the front end too, I'm kind of cool. I'm very cool with the YouTube, moving to YouTube. We did that where I work. If for no other reason, anybody with an internet connection can log into YouTube and watch a meeting, where with the Facebook platform, there was a lot of people, like I have relatives that don't engage in Facebook. So now they can get on YouTube and watch a meeting where they couldn't with Facebook. So I think it was a worthwhile move. I thought that the plan, I guess maybe talking to Jeremy before this meeting, I got kind of educated on this a little better than I was. So my understanding is right now, somebody can log on YouTube and watch this meeting live. Then they kind of can go over to Facebook on our village page. It's pinned near the top of the page, I think. And they could comment about, they could comment over here about things they're watching over here. I guess my question, I know there was a reason or we wouldn't have done it that way. And I've had a lot going on lately. My memory's not real good, but I guess if we're going to have a setup where you can watch watch a council meeting on YouTube, but you can go over to this Facebook platform and comment, why wouldn't we just have the comments turned on? There's probably a good reason, but I'm just trying to figure out what it is. Why wouldn't we just have the comments turned on YouTube and people could do what they traditionally did?
So,
I don't know why I'm looking at, it's not like you decided all this. I'm not,
yeah. So the question.
That's the question that's been posed to me. I'm kind of reposing
yeah.
it. So,
So the question is, do I address this now or because Jason's online and then we come back? Sure, like, I'll do whatever.
Let's end with Steve's round table and then we'll come back, but you can answer that question if you wish.
Okay, great. So, so the specific question you're talking about is if you're doing it in two different places, then why not have it in one place? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we moved to YouTube for several good reasons. I referenced one of them, anybody with an internet connection. There were some other, latency's better and things like that. But kind of in the middle of doing that, we also said, there was a second thing, let's just not make the comments be turned on there. We can leave them over here on Facebook. And I'm just wondering why why. It just seems like it'd be simpler. If we're going to allow comments, why not just allow them on the YouTube feed?
Right. So, the reason it has to do with the reason why we got away from Facebook in the first place is that Facebook, and I'm going to use some loaded words, but I mean, there's good science to back that up. It's a fairly toxic environment. And so we're trying to segregate official business from places where things could get dicey. Doesn't have to. We can have great conversations on Facebook, but sometimes it doesn't. And so the idea would be like, this is where we got one place where we're doing official business and another place where people can talk about it if they want to and not cause one to affect the other negatively.
I don't remember. If we did, I'm sure I didn't vote for it, but did we take a vote to
We did.
not do the comments? Okay.
We did. I thought there was a subcommittee set up. I
Yeah,
thought
'cause I don't
Mark and you
remember
and
a
Mike
vote neither.
were on a committee.
And I've asked about that a couple of times, whether we voted on that.
We need to I think we need to revisit. I'm not saying we need to change. I would be much in favor of changing. I would like to have the comments on YouTube. I'm probably outvoted on that. That's fine, but that's just my official, I just assumed they would just be right there in the same place. But I thought it was for all these other reasons I just said. Better latency, better transmission, doesn't cut out, it's more stable. Anybody without an internet, shame on me for not listening good enough, I guess, but I didn't catch that, like in the middle of all that, we were worried about this toxic environment and all that stuff. I just think when we've seen it should definitely be edited. We've seen some stuff where like people in the village employees were, having personal information divulged in comments and profanity, all that kind of stuff should always be cut. But if the reason that we're cutting comments is because us six don't want to get toxic comments, I could care less about. I mean, I like getting toxic comments. I mean, you can learn. I like getting comments. You can learn from them, and I've got thick enough skin to know that when you take a public office, you're probably going to get some of that. So if that's the only reason we're taking them off, I didn't understand that when this transition was made, and I've just respectfully asked that maybe we revisit that.
I did not mean to imply that we didn't want toxic comments. When I said that, it was the village was concerned about the environment that was being created. Now, I got a suspicion that kind of maybe what happened is it was when we talked about it, we talked about a bunch of things at once. And this is what, so if we want to revisit it, because I'll be honest with you, okay, I'm just let you know I'm against it. But if we vote for it, it's as easy as clicking a single button. I mean, it's not like, so we can revisit, we can vote. I don't even.
How about the vote first off to say that we're removing the comments? Because I still have not heard that we even took a vote.
Okay, see, this is where I think things got confused because it was in the whole thing with switching to YouTube. And I think there was a lot of things that maybe were understood and maybe not stated as clearly as they could have been.
I think that's a good explanation. I remember a
Right,
conversation.
so I'm not saying it's you, Mike. I'm saying it might have been the message coming to Mike Mays. You see what I'm saying? Which means it might be a decent idea to revisit it. I'm going to vote against it, but I'm happy to revisit it if we want to.
I think that people should have the right, if they're paying the bill for all of this, the people in the community that's paying the bill should have the right to voice their comment.
Well, they can.
Well, why don't we do
I
this?
think
Let's
this
not
is-
do a
yeah,
vote
yeah.
tonight. Let's think of it until our next council meeting, and then we can come back and then we can vote up or down if we want
Okay.
comments on there. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Sure. Yep. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, let's stop with our roundtable discussion now. since
One
Jason-
quick
yeah,
thing. I'm
okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
On the heels of that, on the very heels of that, though, some people out there are concerned about being able to comment and this and that. My village council email is steve.wolf. There's an E on the end of my name, so Steve, is it Steve dot? Yeah, Steve.wolf, WOLFE, at georgetownohio.gov. And my phone number is 513-446-4587. So people that have concerns about not being able to express opinions or whatnot in real time on the same platform that want to contact me about issues, some of you have over the last 48 hours, feel free to reach out to me through either one of those venues. Thank you, Mayor.
We'll stop on our roundtable. Start up with you, Mike, when I get back. Right now, I think we have our Economic Development Director, Jason Hammond, with us, and I don't know whether we want to have an intro for him. Jason, can you hear us? Okay, we're having trouble with volume here. Is that something we can control?
Would it be better if I filtered like through me? Jason, can you hear me better?
I can hear you loud and clear, Jeremy.
So maybe I'm the voice of Dale Cahill tonight.
That's not even coming through the projector at all.
Yeah, no, it's coming through here. Yeah.
Are you up as high as you go?
Yes.
Okay.
Your mic down there?
Can you put your mic
Oh, let's try this.
if you don't get feedback?
Well, give me a test here, Jason. Can you talk real quick for us?
Can you
Okay,
give?
good evening, everyone.
Yeah, we hear you a little bit better. Yeah.
All right,
So you may have to shout with a megahorn, but
I can talk louder if that'll help. I don't know.
I think that's probably better if you do.
If I hold the mic right down in it, I think we'll be okay. But otherwise, feel free to use your outside voice, man.
Okay, we'll do.
There we go. Welcome, Jason. So the floor
Should
is yours.
do you want me to share my screen to run through the PowerPoint deck?
I gave everybody a paper copy of it.
Or, Jeremy, do you have a copy of that?
Can't see that screen on there.
I have a copy right here. I have you give me 2 seconds. I can get that up digitally too. I'm gonna freeze the screen here for just a second. I can get it up to share. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
I'm hoping this is. Let's see.
He looks really beady-eyed.
He can hear you. Nothing. All right, let's see how good I am at this. I'm breaking stuff over here. Georgetown Port Authority overview. All right. Now let's see if I.
We'll start looking for signs in Maysville. Waste 2 hours of my life looking for signs in Maysville.
You shut your pie hole, man. I'm working hard over there.
No.
It's a long story.
It's a long story.
Calendar, Teams chat. Stupid thing.
It was one of the longest afternoons of our lives, wasn't it, Mark?
It just drives
You could have just drove down there, and saved me a lot of work.
Yeah, it saved me a lot of time.
Yes, exactly. Sure. Okay. T-minus 3, 2. Can you guys see that all right?
No.
That's the wrong answer, guys. Work with me again.
It doesn't really matter.
Jeremy, they can't
We all
see
have
that
this
screen
problem.
on the-
Nobody at
I-
home
well,
can see it anyway.
Jason and I'm just, okay. Choose what?
He made it.
Jeremy, I could probably share my screen from my end.
I think I just did it. Can you guys see?
Okay. Okay.
No.
Stop giving me the wrong
There you
answer. That's not the correct answer, guys. It's not going up there.
But Jason, we have the sheets that
Yes, I
we
know.
printed off, so we can go with that if you wish.
Yeah. You want to try sharing from your end, it's fine, but we do have the paper copy and we can follow along with that.
Okay.
Oh, that's why I had it. Oh my God, it was working and I forgot to unfreeze. Thank you, Joe. All right, here we go. This is going to work beautifully now. You're going to be so impressed with this. You're gonna be like, Jeremy, I can't believe you didn't do this beforehand. Now you're gonna see it, right?
There we go.
Yeah, baby.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry,
Hey, Jeremy,
Jason.
one quick favor. Could you hit the minus button just to zoom out a little bit so I can see the bottom of the screen there?
So you hit the minus button. Is that any better? No, it keeps jumping back when I do that. Nope, not like that. I don't know, man. Every time I hit the minus button, it does that and then it jumps back again.
Okay.
Let's see. That's what I got, man. It's not doing what I want it to do.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, here, I'm gonna,
How about this? Is that better?
all right, hang on. Can I share my screen?
You go right ahead. I'm happy to turn that over to you.
Okay.
There you go. You're sharing your screen and it's fine.
Okay. There we go.
There you go.
All right, perfect.
Thank you, Jason.
Well, okay, no problem at all. Well, good evening, everyone. And again, for those of you in the room that may not know me or haven't seen me for a while, my name is Jason Hammond with Hammond Consulting Group, under contract with the village, of course, to be the economic development consultant. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to talk about Ohio Port Authorities and the potential for establishing one for the village of Georgetown. So Ohio Port Authorities are defined in the Ohio Revised Code under Section 4582. And there's a hyperlink there in the PDF and PowerPoint versions that you can click on and take you to that section of code. But port authorities are designed as an economic development tool that local governments, either at the municipal or county level, utilize throughout the state. And they've been given a very broad range of powers, with a particular emphasis on the ability to conduct real estate development and financing activities. And just a common misperception, there's no requirement to have any sort of maritime function or activity for to establish a port authority. You could be completely landlocked without any access to water and still have a port authority. So again, some of the highlighted powers that port authorities have, they can own, lease, and sell real property, and also construct and build improvements on property. They can also own personal property as well, but their powers with real property are again, very broad. They're designed to get business and accomplish economic development. So some of their powers are geared towards that end. One of those is the competitive bidding process is not required. And I think this is really aimed at, moving at, quote, the speed of business. Port authorities have essentially the same powers as a CIC, but plus additional ones. CIC, a Community Improvement Corporation. One such power is that they can issue tax-exempt bonds, which companies typically prefer if possible, and developers. And one of the big powers is that they can structure what's known as a capital lease transaction. So let's assume that there's a company wants to move to the village and they're going to build a building and own it. Well, under a capital lease transaction, the Port Authority would actually hold title to the building for a set period of time, typically around 7 years or so, and then they would lease the building to the company during that duration. And what this allows the company to do is it provides eligibility for the company to receive a sales tax exemption on the value of construction materials that are used for their construction project. So let's just say, for example, we have a big industrial project. It's going to be a $50 million construction cost. Back to the envelope, 50% labor, 50% materials. In that scenario, the company would be eligible for a sales tax exemption on about $25 million. So you would, apply the Brown County sales tax rate to that dollar amount, and then that would yield what their potential savings would be. However, what's nice is that when you have your own Port Authority, it's generally, practiced throughout the state that the Port Authority collects a fee in exchange for teeing up this transaction and savings to the company. Ports can charge whatever fee they want, but typically 20% of the exemption amount is fairly common throughout the state. So again, on a large-scale industrial project, not only is it a very lucrative opportunity for the company to work with the port and execute this capital lease transaction, it's also very lucrative to the Port Authority, and that's how they can become self-funding and sufficient entities. Pretty straightforward process to establish a Port Authority. Village Council would simply pass authorizing legislation. That is a boilerplate, sort of one-page template. I have examples of that I could freely share. And then the Village Council would appoint board members to the Port Authority. So the Port Authority functions as an independent entity. It is classified as a unit of local government under Ohio Revised Code. But the village maintains some level of, control, I guess you could say, over the port, in that it has the power to appoint board members. Especially for a community of this size, and I think just for overall ease of operating, my recommendation would to have no more than 5 board members. There's been some examples of port authorities throughout the state where they have in the teens. I think one of them actually had 23 board members. And as you can imagine, that makes things a little bit difficult just from an efficiency standpoint. One of the things that varies between a CIC and a Port Authority is that CIC's membership is typically statutory, with members being composed of the public sector. There's no requirement that Port Authority board members are from the private sector, but that's typically how they're set up. And again, I think that makes sense is, in my view, Port Authorities are not a political entity, even though they are classified as a unit of local government. But, I really, advise clients that, Port Authorities are an economic development tool. So I think, board members should generally be, apolitical and just pro-development. At the first Village Port Authority meeting, you do things like approve organizational bylaws. And again, I have copies of different Port Authority bylaws that I can freely share. The board members would appoint officers, chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, etc. And then just other administrative tasks, presumably setting up a bank account at a local bank, getting a federal tax ID number, just basic administrative things that you'd really do for any organizational startup. In terms of operating the Port Authority, as the village's economic development consultant, that's a role that I would envision myself playing. I do that for other clients as well. One client in particular, Monroe County in southeastern Ohio. In that role, I do things like create the meeting agendas, take the meeting minutes, and just general administration of the board and its activities. The real meat and potatoes of it is developing and managing projects that the port would undertake. Things like coordinating with a variety of partners, other economic development organizations, other service providers, like environmental consulting firms, engineering firms, etc. Then applying for grants and other funding to help advance projects. I have a strong track record of success in that area for sure. There's biennial audits that the state auditor performs on port authorities. The complexity of those is really just determined by the activity of the port. And, along with, if you develop the Port Authority to the point where you have, an increasing administrative burden, that's because you're successful. If you're acquiring and developing properties and managing properties, that's success. So, in my mind, that's a trade-off I'll take every day of the week. just some general comments then to kind of wrap up. Some communities have a Port Authority and a CIC. There's certainly no legal requirement that says you have to pick one or the other. If your CIC is, functional, there's not necessarily a need to dissolve it. CICs are a not-for-profit organization, so they are able to, be the recipient of, say, like a foundation grant that a local government may not. There's certainly a role for CICs to play. But some communities have decided that, perhaps it's a bit redundant to have both. Especially smaller communities where the pool of board members may be relatively small. But I think if there has been a trend in recent years, probably the past 20 years, I guess, where I think communities typically favor Port Authority specifically for some of the real estate development and finance capabilities that they have. Then also, municipalities that have a Port Authority often do so even when the county that they're located in also has a port. Several examples throughout the state. Up in my neck of the woods, the city of Lorain has their own Port Authority, and Lorain County has a Port Authority. Ironton has a Port Authority, and Lawrence County has a Port Authority. So again, examples of that exist throughout the state. So there's no Georgetown would not be viewed, in any negative capacity if, say, a neighboring county has one, or another community within Brown County, like Mount Orab, as an example. Which really gets to my last point here is, why should Georgetown establish a Port Authority? I think first and foremost, especially for a smaller rural community, it really provides a mechanism to put you more in the driver's seat of your economic development future. Again, for the village on its own to go out and acquire and develop properties is difficult because of the public bidding process, as just one example. And then simply Port Authorities, in my view, provide a great tool for communities to grow the pie. Especially at the local level, villages and cities are funded by primarily local income tax. So you have to be able to go out and win economic development projects to increase your base of local income tax payers. And ultimately the goal of economic development is to improve the quality of life in place and set yourself up for long-term stability within the community. And it all starts with developing real estate. There's a well-known site selection consultant that I've known for a long time now, and his sort of tagline is no product, no project. And the product would be, of course, available development sites and available buildings. And Port Authorities can really, give a community a competitive advantage in helping develop that product. I won't go through all this here, but just, for everyone's benefit, is a little bit of background about myself and my experience and qualifications. Hard to believe I've been doing this for about 16 years now, 17 years, and next month will mark the 10-year anniversary of having my own consulting firm. That's kind of exciting to me. A little bit about what I do on both the economic development side, doing work for communities, and also providing services to corporate clients as well, helping them evaluate and identify locations to expand or relocate facilities across the United States. And I've had the good fortune and pleasure to work with clients in, probably about 15 or 20 states now throughout my career, ranging all the way from Washington State down to Florida, up to Massachusetts. So I've worked in all areas of the country.
Jason, I think
and, just a little bit of a plug here, I guess. This past fall, I was asked to speak at the Ohio Economic Development Association's annual summit. Down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see the topic there was revitalization, the downstream effects of industrial revitalization. Specifically, they asked me to talk about the success I've had in my role starting and directing the Monroe County Port Authority. So yeah,
Jason, I think we have a
and with
couple of
that,
questions.
just like to say again, thanks for the opportunity to talk with you all tonight, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Michael, I think you have a question. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay, Jason, this
Wait,
is,
can you hear Mike through his microphone, or do I need to translate for him? Go ahead, try Mike.
It was. Can you see me or my screen now, or both?
Both.
Okay. Yeah, I may need you to be the translator. I
Right.
could hear, but it was just faint.
okay, Jason, my question is, as the director of the Port Authority, as you was speaking of, possibly being, how much time would that require more, a month? And what would be the cost for the Port Authority for your services rendered for that extra time?
Did you get that, Jason?
I think I got the gist of it. It's really gonna depend on the type of project activity that can be developed. Starting it from scratch, there are no development sites or buildings or anything like that. So it's really going to be just as things develop.
Okay,
We'll
so,
talk a little bit about an opportunity later on in the meeting. But yeah, I mean, it would just, either just it would just be a as it comes scenario.
so,
Yeah.
so that's kind of generic explanation. Maybe it will be a percentage of the cost of the projects that you'll obtain being the director, or will it be more of an hourly cost?
Yeah, it would just be an hourly or fixed fee. I don't work on a success basis like that. Yeah.
I guess to maybe expand upon that question, Port Authority members are often compensated, from what I understand. And I assume they would typically be compensated from those fees that they collect from helping people circumvent taxes, such as you said, and things like that, or from fees they circumvent from keeping organizations from prevailing wage and stuff like that. So they would, in time, generate income. But when you started off with a new Port Authority and you hadn't generated income yet, if your members were being compensated, where would that money be floated from initially? From the village? Okay.
So that wasn't a question.
What kind of revenue does that?
That was a question to Jason, but the mayor actually kind of answered it before.
With that being said, what kind of revenue are these people, these 5 members, what kind of money are we talking here yearly?
It would be minimal, and that would be something we'd have to set, so.
Can we ask him what they typically are compensated?
So Jason, the question is for example, the 5 members that would be on the Port Authority, what is the typical compensation for a place like Georgetown for 5 people? Like, what do you usually see in a situation like this?
They're volunteer board members.
So the 5 Port Authority members are not paid out anything, it's all volunteer.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So you're saying that for a small village like Georgetown, they're not typically paid? Because my understanding is, in many port authorities, they are paid, but that maybe would be much bigger ones than ours.
Did you hear Steve there, Jason?
I'm sorry, I could not.
Okay, no problem. So do most port authorities work through volunteer of the board members, or do some pay and some not? Is it an issue of size, or like how big a municipality, or how big a number of board members? Or is it your experience that they all are volunteer?
I'm personally not aware of any port authority that provides compensation to its board members. I'm pretty sure most of them, if not all, are volunteer positions, just like most public sector boards.
Mike,
There's nothing. I mean, there's nothing statutorily that would prohibit board members from receiving compensation. I just think it's the general practice that most do not receive it.
Mike is asking, and I'm making eye contact with him to make sure I say this right. Are you currently a director of any port authorities right now?
I serve as the director for the Monroe County Port Authority.
Okay, so is that all one way? How big of an area is that? That's a county-wide one, isn't it, if I'm remember correctly?
Yes.
So Monroe County, is that, I mean, Mike wants to know, like, roughly, ballpark, how many people are in Monroe County? How many people are you impacting there?
The county population is about 13,500.
Mm-hmm. Yep. How long have you been the director of that port authority, and how long has that port authority been in effect?
Since its inception in 2015.
And you've been with them since 2015?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mark has a question.
Yearly investment return, what kind of dollars are they, what's the revenue increase? What's the boost? Does he have like a number of, we seen an increase of business by 30 grand last year, 50,000? Did it increase over that 8-year period?
Can you give us some sense of growth over the period that the Port Authority was in existence? Like even in terms of dollars or business generator, like how do you measure success, and what has it been like?
In his eyes.
In your eyes.
Yeah, so in 2015, we started from scratch. So I guess that would be another question. What do you need financially to start? We identified our first property acquisition opportunity, and I requested $25,000 in startup funds from the county commissioners. Since that point, we've grown to acquire currently 8 properties that total about 250 acres. We have about 1.2 million square feet of building space, 17 tenants that in those companies employ well over 200 people.
In the villages?
During my tenure with Monroe County, since that time, we've brought in through grants and other sources of funding over $32.5 million.
Mark has a question here.
Thank you, Jason. More questions coming here.
Yeah, Mark.
Sorry, Mark.
This is to, am I on?
Yes.
This is to Joe Braun. Joe, a few years ago, there was a governor named, I think his name was Chris Christie. He was the governor of New York who had a problem with port authorities in New York. I don't know the particulars of it, nor they're not for discussion today, but you would make sure that that problem would never exist in Georgetown.
That was the law enforcement, Port Authority law
Yeah.
enforcement, and it's totally
It's not-
separate.
That controls highways and roads and
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's cool.
harbors and things.
That's cool.
I've just got a,
Mark had a legal question for Joe. It wasn't for you, so thank you for being patient.
I've got a question too, but I think it's more towards the mayor and Joe too, so maybe
Yeah,
I'll.
the 8 properties that the Monroe County Port Authority owns have a market value of about $30 million.
Thank you, Aaron.
One thing, just to expound upon Councilmember Wolf's question about port authorities and compensation. For instance, Butler County definitely compensates their administrator and their.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
And some of the other communities. I think what Jason is indicating, though, is that because most of the counties and villages and cities in Ohio are smaller, they don't have the revenue to compensate their members. But as he accurately pointed out, you can compensate those members. Even in some of the cities that I represent, for instance, they compensate members of the Civil Service Commission or the Board of Zoning Appeals. It can happen, it's proportionate, but I think that one of the things that you might want to keep in mind is, and again, I kind of like to say a port authority is something we give birth to, but then it goes off on its own, like a CIC. So I wouldn't start off compensating them because in my mind, that's setting a precedent.
Right.
that they would be compensated.
But-
And I think it's not going to be huge right away.
Right.
And if it did, as the mayor pointed out, that burden would fall on the village to provide. It's like after you give birth, you kind of give them a nest egg and say, okay, now go see what you do with this $10,000.
But the reason I even bring it up is, somewhere the size of Monroe County, would have a huge population pool. And within that huge population pool, you might have a number of very talented, benevolent ex-bankers and things like that, you want financially minded, entrepreneurial kind of people, I would think, on this kind of thing. And you may have a whole lot of those around there, and you may be successful in pulling 4 or 5 of them out to do that completely free. Quite honestly, we have unopposed council seats, when we have elections and stuff like that. So I love everything about it. I see it took me about 10 times of hearing it and review. And then Mr. Hammond's presentation tonight helped again reinforce a lot of the benefits of it. I just wonder, and I think we should pursue it. I'm not trying to be critical of it. I just wonder about, when I think of some people that I think would be superstars on this, they're either still in the middle of making their zillions, and too busy to dedicate time to this, or they've kind of hung it up and they're living their, so I don't think that a few $100s a month is going to change somebody's mind one way or the other, but that's just what I wondered kind of how that was played. And I saw just from kind of looking online that some pay, some don't.
And I would also add, just Councilmember Wolf's point before we take Mr. Anderson's question, I would just point out one of the benefits that those watching at home might not realize is a CIC can own and sell property. It can do things like that. And it's a conduit for the village for projects we can't do. But one of the really unique different things, as Jason pointed out, is that they can issue bonds. It really relates to the financing. And if a business wants to locate in Georgetown but says, well, we would like you to act as a partner for purposes of avoiding taxation when it comes to the purchase of materials or the land, this entity has perks that a CIC doesn't. And so, especially in smaller communities like Georgetown, where we can't just offer them millions of dollars in incentives to come into our community, this would be an incentive we can offer them to help save on the front end.
Yes.
So,
okay.
Mark?
The Port Authority is a separate entity. I'm all for a Port Authority. Who would be in charge? Would a financial director of the Port Authority be in charge of that? Or would that be Natalie in charge of that?
Jason has taken that role in Monroe County.
Okay,
As
just
a
as long as
director.
it's done the correct way, that's all
Yeah,
I'm worried
it wouldn't
about.
necessarily, it could be any way that we could have anyone do that, but he would be one that we would consider for this.
Would we,
For the treasure part of it?
Well, they would elect their treasurer, but he would be the
Okay.
person overseeing.
Okay.
them.
for the benefit of Councilmember Anderson and others, can Councilmember Varner ask Jason to explain how they have to be audited and file with the state, what that process is?
So, how much of this have you been able to hear, Jason?
Just a little. It's clear, but it's just very faint.
Sorry, yeah. So the question is how do you run finances? Do you have a financial officer? Who is that person? How do you file? Like what legal?
Audited, and
Are you
because we have to do
audited?
filings with the state.
And do you file with the state?
Yes. So in Monroe County, for example, one of our board members is a CPA. So, until we started to really acquire, complex real estate, it's a pretty simple filing. So, we, in the selection of our board members, we look to people that have, skills that come in handy. At this point, now that we have a complex real estate portfolio, we contract with an accounting firm to provide those services. But, in terms of just like general paying the bills, that's split between myself and the treasurer.
And in terms of auditing and filing with the state, could you briefly outline what your responsibilities are, what the Port Authority's responsibilities are there?
Yeah, so there's the state auditor's office, performs a biennial audit, so every 2 years.
Thank you. Is
Yeah.
that, am I covering what was, okay?
That was just to Mr.
Does he have a yearly cost that he gets paid as a director for the place that he's over right now?
Do you have a yearly cost that you get paid for being a director, like right now? A yearly
I
cost?
do.
What is that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Does he mind sharing that with us to give us an idea of like, we could divide that by 3? That number based off of us having a populace of 4,500 people in town, and he's got 14,000. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So Mike is asking, one, do you mind disclosing what that is? And two, is there
That's
a
why-
prorating of that because of the size of the village versus the size of Monroe County? Am I doing that right, Mike? Okay, that's what I got, Jason.
Well, I don't think population is necessarily an accurate way to gauge compensation. I don't think it's a function of headcount necessarily. I think it's a function of what activity you're generating. So, the time commitment is really based on what projects you're working on. You could be in a city of 1 million people and have no developable land, and you don't really have an opportunity to do anything. Whereas if you're in a rural county that has great development sites but a population of 10,000, so it's really a function of what your development opportunities and project activity is, more so than just population.
No clue of what it costs.
Now, this could be a negotiable fee, depending on the volume of work that we do. I mean, it's nothing that he can say, this is how much I charge for being a director. We have to decide that, and then we could say up or down on those types of things.
Yeah, and again, I mean, that's the fee.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Before we were to engage with anybody, we would want to know all the pricing amounts that we would need to do to make a good educated decision. So that's only the way it can be done.
Did you get all that, Jason?
No, but I think I got the gist of it. I mean, I think an initial fee would just be based just an hourly sort of arrangement, because again, until you generate project activity, there's not a big administrative burden. So you're going to have a meeting once a month, do the agenda, do the meeting minutes. Other than that, you're just trying to establish some project flow initially. Maybe you identify a piece of property that you'd like to acquire, and then it's all right, what grant opportunities are there to assist with that? And what sort of infrastructure is needed, et cetera. So, as that momentum builds, that's where I think you'd reevaluate to say, okay, is the compensation, if it's a flat fee, is the compensation commensurate with the amount of time that you're putting in? And it hopefully as success happens and it becomes more, more time is required, then you can adjust the flat fee accordingly. Or it's just simply, an hourly rate. My hourly rate's $150 an hour.
So I'm not as good as some of the people in this room are with that. So it'd be kind of like the way we compensate Joe, our solicitor, right? Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, and
I mean, the numbers are different, but the approach is the same.
I guess one of the questions is right now, I just asked the administrator, you're currently paying his group $3,000 a month. It's a flat rate for the work that he does. Maybe one of the things we could talk about is some of that work going to be wrapped into that monthly fee? I think that's what the mayor said. It can be negotiable. Or is it going to be above and beyond that on an hourly rate? So I think we could do an agreement, and I think it would come before this body for sure.
But Jason, I think it's really important that you hear this part here, is there's a sidebar between Joe and Art about the amount that your firm currently charges the village, and if you were to have a new role with the village, would that be part of what would be taken into account? Would working with the Port Authority be completely above and beyond your current fee, or would your current fee be part of that? Am I saying this right, Joe?
Yeah, I think that's
And-
fair.
And once the Port Authority is established and has finances,
They would take
that
that.
they would take over the salary. It would be
Ah.
pretty much independent of the village at that point.
And as the, fingers crossed, as the Port Authority gets rolling and becomes more self-sufficient, would they then take over that role of compensation?
I mean, that's something that could happen. Again, as sustainable income becomes available. So I mean, that's just a really it depends.
So just a policy
To the
decision?
earlier,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
So I was saying it just becomes a policy decision at that point?
I think it could be.
Okay, all right.
The other part of that is, a lot of times port authorities are funded by the city or county that they're in. So I mean, the village in this case could provide an annual funding source to the port authority that could pay for things like service providers, et cetera. So that's how it's done in some cases where, like I said, the city and or the county provide funding to the port. So yeah, I mean, there's the options how to handle that. With respect to the first point, yeah, I mean, I think it would just be, work within the current confines of the contract, and then if it exceeds, what I'm putting in, then we just convert it to hourly. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. But again, to start off, it's not,
We need to do that, really.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'm looking around the room, I'm trying to make eye contact around the room and see if there's anything else that.
Good.
All right, I think people are feeling they've got good information for the moment. And so what are we doing next here? Help me out.
Are we wishing to do something?
Do we need a motion?
Presentation's
or-
over.
Yeah, the presentation is over. So if, do we need to do any more discussion?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Should we thank him and disconnect?
Well, he's going to stay on there with this.
Oh, okay. So do you want to do executive session?
Please hang tight for just a second, Jason.
Are we moving on? Okay. So I would like to make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22, G8, to consider confidential information related to the specific business strategy of an applicant for economic development assistance involving the possible expenditure of public funds in connection with the project, and the executive session is necessary to protect the interest of the applicant. And Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 G1 to discuss the compensation of a public employee.
We have a motion to that effect. Is there a second?
So moved. Or second, what am I doing?
Yes,
Yeah.
Second.
Let's
second.
do a roll call vote.
Kelly?
Yes.
Steve? Mike?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes,
Mark?
Yes.
Okay.
so we just moved to go into executive session, Jason, so hang tight, please.
Do we need just a few minutes after, or do we want to go right into it? Let's do 5 minutes. Jason, we're going to do 5 minutes.
So, okay, I'm gonna hang up the call, or am I?
Just, you can keep him if he wishes.
All right, so Jason, want to take 5, maybe a little potty break here, and we'll be back with you.